I spin thy web of chaos, mother. I spin it in your name. Let not the threads unravel. Each strand I lay binds my path before thee, for betrayal is the truest silk. In the snare of treachery, even loyalty finds its end, and thus do I honor you. Right, gather close and keep your boots off my rugs. This bit of history drips both with silk and venom, and I'd hate to have either on the floor. We will speak, dear one, now of Arashni, who was not always the whisper in the web, nor the knife behind the smiles of the drow. Before the dark, there was laughter in the woods. Let the sage of Shadow Dale guide your steps through the annals of history. Chapter 1. Laughter. In the mornings of Elvendom, those bright hours when pure starlight felt new upon the face, Arashni held a gentle dominion over destiny and the arts. She was a consort to Corellon Larethian, and with Sehanine Moonbow, the three sat the high celestial thrones of the Seldarine. Time moved, uncountable sunrises. They sang while the noon sat high in the sky, and conversed endlessly as dusk fell to give way to moonlight. Do not let later horrors erase this. There was laughter even then. Arashni's wit could flense pomposity from a prince. Her barbs would set Corellon laughing, till tears shone like dew within the morning chill. And from such laughter, say the oldest songs, sprang the mortal fae. Sehanine, with her skyward elegance, shone through with arcs of silver grace. She gave the world more, besides the simple colours permeating in the divine and fae worlds. Sometimes their laughter ran dark and sly, true, but most often it rang honest. Arashni's brow matched the night sky. So too did the first dark elves cleave to her as patroness. To Corellon she bore twins. Vaeron first breathed, and Ilistrae, a bright dancer with a heart tuned towards mercy, and a third child, Vandria Gilmadrith, whose gaze appraised the world as a commander reads a battlefield. Mark this family well. The echoes of their supper table still rattle in temples and tombs. How did laughter curdle? How did the song of the elves move towards disharmony? There's the tangle within this tale. The Feywild keeps time unlike the mortal world, skipping of verses, repeating bridges, and within the lush plains, a song never ending, but now untuned. Even Corellon and Sehanine will not swear to the first fissure. Some divinations point back to the unbuilt hours of Arvandor, when Grumsh, one-eyed storm of orcish wrath, sought to destroy it. Corellon would face his ancient rival alone, as is his foolish, noble habit, and he often does, a stubborn yet brave deity. Arashni respected that wish, but admired the rage it answered. Admiration is a seed. In the wrong garden, it grows predatory vines, a simple lust. Later tales whisper she dallied with Grumsh, and that her passions strayed yet deeper, consorting with abyssal lords. Hear me. Such trafficking aided her corruption, but they were not its root within the annals of history, and those tomes given to me by Tasha. The root was simpler and sharper, envy and ambition. Corellon would grant her near anything asked. She desired that which can only be taken. A throne and the Seldarine's heads bowed beneath her hand. Treason rarely arrives with trumpets. It begins in the workshop and with the scabbard. Arashni's first attempt was a craftsman's murder she orchestrated. She enchanted the scabbard she herself had wrought for Corellon's sword. This would result in the blade shattering at the perfect stroke, and that moment was Grumsh's stroke. A neat inversion. Destiny's goddess turning her artistry against divine fate. Yet the night has eyes, and Sehanine's sight is keenest then. She saw the peril as it was woven and soured the spell. Thus, when steel met steel, the blade did not fail, and the would-be widow's loom remained hungry. Her second gambit was blood and opportunism. When Malar the Beast Lord slew the Orc god Hern upon Faerun, Arashni goaded Malar to fall upon Corellon, who was wounded from other wars. But the Lord of the Starry Bows is hard to corner. He drove the Beast Lord off, breath ragged, but his pride unbroken. A personal note: if you think Corellon's gentle nature softens his sword arm, do volunteer to test the theory, preferably far from my pipe rack. And still her tongue ran barbed, when Corellon spared Grumsh, mercy being vice or virtue as the age demands. Aroshni spat, yet another sign of Corellon's weakness. He should have slain the orc when he had the chance. I would have, or at the very least, I would have gelded him. There's a music to cruelty when the singer thinks herself right. Now, dear one, plots leave footprints, even in starlight. Threads tugged become tapestries unraveling to the cold ether of history. In the end, it was a name, not a sword, that first struck Araushni. Sehanin Moonbow, her face pale and unblinking, gave a judgment's voice. I name you Arashni, traitor to the Seldarine. Names are brands and open doors. That naming opened the long stair down from celestial throne to the dungeon, from a consort to the conspirator, from Araushni toward the thing we will, in time, call Lolth. Her bond to the elves thinned like a strand over fire. Faith frayed. Destiny, once her craft, began to weave her a new tale instead. Chapter 2. The Weaver's War. Grand betrayals are rarely a single stroke or one act. They're a bolt of treason stitched with 1,000 petty threads to lies. So it was with Arashni. Having failed in her craft and ambushes, she then reached for a form of pageantry, nothing so distracting as a war to hide the true murder. She summoned a host of hostile powers. Gods with old splinters under their nails where the Seldarine were concerned, and pointed them at Arvandor. A fearsome sight, yes, but to the canny eye, the host was a shabby tapestry. Loud, ill-led, and doomed. That was the point. The army's purpose was never to achieve victory. It was the cover for a more malicious endeavor. The blade she meant to use was much nearer to home. You recall the cursed scabbard, the one she'd first tried to turn against Corellon. She contrived to place it back in his keeping, and to make certain that, in the tumult to come, Ylistrea would be at her father's side. Thus, when the dancer's arrows flew to save him, the scabbard's spite would draw them true, to Corellon's heart, and the Seldarine would see a daughter made the perfect scapegoat. A mother's love, when soured, is a cruelty too elegant for most mortals to imagine. Sehanin was not blind to the gathering betrayal. She confronted Arashni before the first spear point glinted. But the weaver struck first, silk over her steel, and with the swift shadowed hand of Veyron aiding her, bound Sehanin away. Mother and son then laid the trail. Ylistrea would follow. A chance finding of the scabbard, a dutiful delivery, and a daughter placed where a daughter mustn't be when knives are in the air. Then the assault fell upon Arvandor, as noisy as a goblin opera. In the chaos, a new shadow bloomed. Gornador, the Elder Eye, slid into the fray. With a gaze that unthreads will, it stilled Corellon, pinning him as a moth to glass. An ogre god thundered in to finish the work. Ylistrea did what love and training demand. She loosed, silver shafts singing, swift as it could carry them. The arrows flew perfectly, and the scabbard betrayed perfectly, bending their flight against the very chest they were meant to save. Corellon staggered. Blood spilled across his chest. I have seen many wounds. Few ring in memory like the gasp that went around Arvandor in that moment. And still, the anti-Seldarine host did as Araushni had arranged. It broke, crumpling into rout. A failure on the field to hide a success of the heart's undoing. In the hush after battle, with Arvandor's groves whispering and healers bent to their work, Araushni came near with a final kindness. A flask, cool and clear, said to hold Elysium's water, gathered by Illustray's hand, a balm for wounds and weariness alike. In truth, it held a poison of Illustray's own devising, crafted for the clean mercies of the hunt. There is a special wickedness in turning a child's art to a parent's death, but prisons are not always perfect, even divine ones. At immense cost, Sihanin tore free of Veyron's bindings, moonlight breaking its own chains. Erdri Fayenya and Hanali Selanil stood with her. 3 breaths, 1 purpose, the triune goddess Angharad. Their joined magic caught the treachery at Corallan's lips, purged the poison, and steadied the light that wavered in him. Judgment, when it came, was not shouted. It was spoken, and the speaking was heavier than any blade. Arashni, your sentence has been spoken by the Seldarine. For what you have done, for what you have become, you are declared Tanari. Be what you are, and go where you must. Names are doors, and to become Tanari is a door that opens only down toward an abyss. Thus did a consort become an exile, a weaver, a webmaker. The stair from Arvandor leads many places, but for Lolth, for that is the name the fall would finish, its last step yawns over the 66th layer. Chapter 3. Aftermath, the Demonweb crown. Be what you are, and go where you must, Corellon said, and the door that opened on that naming did not so much swing as drop. Down she went, now and forever made Tanari, falling through fathomless dark until the abyss itself found a shape eager to fit her. There, upon the 66th layer, she took a new name to match a new truth, Lolth. Do not imagine that the abyss welcomed her. The abyss does not welcome any creature. It tests their will and breaks their resolve more often than not. Yet the spider took hold where even demon princes slip. She claimed the Demonweb pits, a geometry of bridges and breakneck voids, of palaces strung like cocoons between gulfs that do not end. She set her city spirals to turning and her sentry strands to singing, and in that murderous loom she wove her crown. Opposition came, as opposition does. Kiara and Sali, revenant queen and elven goddess of vengeance, rose first with the cold resolve of a being who believes their purpose is inspired by fate. She expected a duel of wrath. Lolth, however, answered with a possession, confusing patience and pressure, silk through her bone. Kiaran Sali sank, swiftly, quietly, her sovereignty subjugated. Her name turned into one more thread tied off at Lolth's wrist. Then the keener contest, Gornador, that which lurks, hungry as the gap between thoughts. Where Kiaransali brought cold blades, Gornador brought an everlasting hunger. It reached to subsume Lolth, to make silk a flavour swallowed by an ooze and slime. The battle was long, oh long, for patience is a virtue to spiders and filthy oozes. Yet in the end, when Gornador's grip slipped and victory fled its tendrils, it turned upon its own. In rage, the Elder Eye stripped the wits from its followers, leaving the mind murked and mewling for purpose. Power bled where the worship waned. His purpose diminished. Lolth ascended to ever greater heights. Thus the Demonweb's mistress emerged victorious. Her throne's legs sunk deeper into that hateful layer. Crowned and coiled, Lolth looked up, as spiders must, past her abyssal canopy towards starlight, where she could not reach with fangs alone. Vengeance gnawed, but the path to Corallan's throat was barred. Gods may not strike gods without prices that move between realms. Very well then. If she could not mar the father, she would scar the children, make elves her worshippers, make a misery of her ministry, and so transmit pain upward like venom through a vein that wasn't ready for a new substance. Fate, ever the jester at destiny's feast, obliged with a thread in her web. A moon elf, Cathrilia Amaryllis, ventured into the abyss to retrieve her lover. A bright, mad courage I've admired and scolded in equal measure. This occurred in the shadow of the battle for Larian, and Lolth, peering through the elf's resolve as through a spyglass, caught sight of a mortal's heart and of a world. Toril. She tasted old familiarity there, the scent of her son, Vaeran, thick upon the southern winds. At that time, he was major deity in Ilithia, and his shadow ran long across that land. Lolth's gaze, ever appraising, fixed upon the southern empire, Ilithia, a rich, cosmopolitan, hungry for change. There is a sort of fierceness peculiar to peoples who count both coin and grudges well. She liked it immediately. Then came the hinge upon which empires swing, a revelation given by love and taken by war. Kethrilia, in her desperate course, unwittingly bared what was meant to be hidden. Ilithia, under the elder cunning of Canalist, took notice. Armories stirred. War preparations flowered like night blooming a poison. Lolth watched the old mage's craft with a connoisseur's smile, and, finding the flavour matched her palate, chose him. Canalist became her first worshipper and consort, a mortal hand to extend her reach to the mortal world, a mind to mirror her methods. A brief advisory from your humble narrator. If a goddess smiles at your stratagem and offers her hand, count your fingers before you take it, and again after, for to test your intelligence against a divine being is often your loss already. From the Demonweb, she cast new lines down into Toril's tangled canopy. Shrines bloomed, black orchids in back chambers. Oaths were spun in the dark between one heartbeat and the next. She pressed the city's appetites into patterns, envy braided to zeal, zeal to obedience, obedience to worship, until the rope would pull, not just a people to change, but to a new destiny. Understand this, what she admired in Ilithia was not merely its wealth or worldly gloss, but the temper of its folk, their will to reach, and their refusal to wait. Such dispositions are clay the Spider Queen adores. Thus did a southern empire become the first gallery in her mortal museum, halls lined with masks that smile and bite in the same breath. With Kiaransali cowed, Gonadau dimmed, and Khan Nalist enthroned beside her in shadowed council, Lolth's Demonweb spun further still. She had what the fallen always desire: control, over a layer, over a people, over the story told when her name is whispered, where candles fail to burn further. And from that humming web, she could pluck any one of 1,000 threads leading upward, each a road by which torment travels home. Was Corellon beyond her claws? Aye, but grief is not, nor division, nor the dark sweetness of envy spooned quietly into 1,000 elven hearts. This was her vengeance. A centuries-long embroidery, every stitch a choice offered, every knot a consequence earned. Lolth is the goddess of the drow race and drow society. She is responsible for the nature, customs, laws, and survival of most drow communities. The Spider Queen maintains her absolute rule over drow cities by means of her clergy, who tirelessly seek out and destroy all traces of dissent, disobedience, rival faiths, or sacrilege, and ruthlessly enforce the way of Lolth. The Spider Queen foments unending chaos in drow society and sets the drow eternally at war with each other, both for her own amusement and to prevent complacency, runaway pride from asserting itself, or the rise of other faiths. Lolth is also venerated by Chiteens, a small spider-like race that are cast-offs of the drow. Lolth was once a lesser power of the Seldarine and the consort of Corellon Larethian. She was the patron of artisans, the goddess of elven destiny, and, later, by Corellon's decree, the keeper of those elves who shared her darkly beautiful features. The weaver of destiny bore Corellon twin godlings, Vaeron and Eilistri, before she turned against her lover and betrayed him. First, she aided Groomsh One-Eye, chief among the Orcish gods, in one of his perennial battles with the creator of the elves, and then she set Malar on the trail of the weakened Corellon. After observing the Beast Lord defeat Hearn on Faerun, when these plots failed as a result of Corellon's skill at arms and Sihanine's interference, Arashni raised a host of hostile powers, the Anti-Seldarine, to assault Arvandor. Despite the treachery of Arashni, and a lesser extent, Veyron, the assaults failed, and the perfidy of Corellon's consort and son were revealed. By order of the Council of the Seldarine, Arashni was transformed into a spider-shaped Tanari and banished to the Abyss. As an abyssal lord, Arashni assumed the name Lolth and conquered a considerable portion of that plane, driving off Gaunador and subjugating Kiaran Sali in the process. The Spider Queen then turned her attentions toward corrupting the mortal children of the Seldarine by reclaiming her divinity. Lolth's attentions were drawn once again to Abia Toril by the intrusion of the moon-elven heroine Kethrilia Amaryllis into her domain, and the Spider Queen immediately began to cultivate followers among the most cruel and corrupt of Corellon's children in Faerun. In the centuries that followed, Lolth made great inroads among the warring Illithiri, who had long since spread across the south, conquering their kinfolk under the careful guidance of Heron, and to a lesser extent, Gaunadar. Lolth's machinations among the elves culminated in the Crown Wars, and among the greatest of those conflicts in the Underdark. But by the time she had enmeshed most of the dark-skinned Illithiri, now drow, in her webs and engendered the death of countless elves and the destruction of one elven civilization in Faerun. In the centuries since the Crown Wars, Lolth's followers have continued to spread throughout the Underdark, from Dusklith to Talindet, and from Gwalidirth to now fallen Veldrin Shah. While other powers contest her rule, the Spider Queen's dominion over the Dark Elves continues to expand, albeit more slowly than before. Lolth's followers have been occupied with the conquest of the Underdark and the destruction of the fairy elves of the surface, and the Spider Queen has never ceased in her efforts to destroy the elven sanctuary of Evermeet. Since the time of Troubles, Lolth has assumed additional aspects as two of her many stratagems to increase her and her faithful's influence and personal power. In the drow city of Menzoberranzan, in the Underdark beneath the north where Lolth is known there, she changed and reappeared during the time of Troubles. For this, the Spider Queen has allowed more power to the demi-power of chaos and lies, Zinzarina the Hunted. While Zinzarina was once a legendary drow assassin and later an emerging demi-power of a world other than Abea Toril, the Spider Queen recently slew Zinzarina, or at least banished her influence from the realms, and assumed her aspect as to see if additional divine aspects increased or decreased the total, albeit fragmented, field of power available. In the Lands of Light, Lolth has long found that the deeply imbued racial antipathy of the surface elves toward the Spider Queen interferes with her attempts to seduce otherwise eminently corruptible individuals. With the death of Moanda, always a more comprehensible and tempting force of evil to the nature lovers than the Spider Queen. Lolth has assumed the Darkbringer's aspect and portfolio of rotting death, decay, and corruption over natural life in a bid to add elven, half-elven, and human worshippers to the ranks of her faithful. Although the Spider Queen detests all the members of the Seldarine, Lolth reserves her deepest hatred for her former lover, Corellon Larethian, who banished her to the Abyss and named her an enemy of elvenkind. Lolth particularly loathes Sehanine Moonbow, long her rival, for her part in foiling Lolth's plots to seduce Corellon as head of the Seldarine. The Spider Queen has also invoked vengeance against Fenmaril Mestarine, who aided the fair elves after initially failing to seduce him. Cruel in her capriciousness, and sought by many to be insane, she delights in setting her worshippers at each other's throats, so that the strongest, most devious, and most cruel rise ever nearer. Lolth roams the realms often, appearing in answer to the rituals of drow priests, and working her constant intrigues in the drow cities of the Underdark. Since the time of Troubles, Lolth appeared in the north of Menzoberranzan to affirm her divinity. The Spider Queen secretly wants to be worshipped by hundreds of elves and other races on the surface realms, and sometimes journeys among their communities, whispering promises of power to all. Lolth is malign in her dealings and can never be relied on. She is as likely to betray her followers as they are to betray each other. The Spider Queen enjoys fomenting strife in every form and makes the surface dwellers ever more hostile toward the subterranean drow bands. But the Spider Queen enjoys the company of and can converse with spiders of all sorts. Lolth can appear as a giant black widow spider with crimson eyes, or she can change into the form of a human-sized, exquisitely beautiful female drow. In this form, she often clothes herself entirely in clinging spiders, but sometimes wearing drow chain mail styled into artful dresses or tunics. She can also combine the two forms, appearing as a giant spider with a coldly beautiful female drow head. This is the form in which she is usually found in the abyss, and it is thought to be her true form. Lolth can call on any sphere or school of magic for her spells. Volo's Guide to Lolth. Chapter 1, in which your humble author lowers a lantern into the web. By Volothamp Geddarm. Yes, that Volo, with the usual tut-tutting annotations by a certain meddlesome sage of Shadowdale. Dear reader, if you have ever felt a prickle at the nape, as though 8 patient eyes or legs had noticed you before you noticed them, why, then you already grasp the thesis of this chapter. Among surface folk, Lolth's name is whispered with the same sour dread one reserves for collapsing cellars and aristocrats with opinions in Waterdeep's ballrooms. She is, to most, virtually synonymous with the drow, say spider, and a dozen legs scuttle in the mind. Say Lolth, and whole cities vanish behind a veil of black silk. In the Underdark, there is knowledge, hard and hated. Dwarves curse her priest between hammer blows. The Svirfneblins spit and ward themselves at passing mention of her name, and every sensible wanderer chooses the long tunnel over the short road that skirts a shrine of the Webmother. Elminster's note, dryly penned, sensible wanderers avoid both. The dark elven priests of Eilestre, rare candles in that night, will speak of Lolth when others will not. They do so with a fury that could set the salt water of the deep wastes to a boil, condemning her enslavement of their kin. Yet mark me, even those who kneel at Lolth's altars do so as trembling clerics with fears of terror. Her devout fear her. They venerate because she gives them power, never because she deserves love, loyalty, or a single kind principle. Among the Dark Elves, rivals who court other sinister powers still tip the head toward her web, even as they revile the Spider Queen and her priesthood for monopolizing the strings. And no, dear reader, that contradiction does not trouble them. Power has a way of reconciling the irreconcilable. Elminster's note: Volo once tried to reconcile a tab at the Old Skull Inn. Results were rather similar. Know this as law. Every noble house of the Drow keeps its own private temple, and every Drow city boasts at least one grand public space, an open plaza or yawning cavern, for pageants, proclamations, and the sort of large ritual that ends with fewer witnesses than it began. Most great cities further maintain a high temple of the Spider Queen, where priests are trained, tested, and, should they survive, their will tempered to torture, kidnap, and enslave the races of the Underdark. The inner chambers are reserved for devotion and the serious business of Lolth, vows, verdicts, and most spellcasting. They are kept in absolute darkness, broken only by the sickly radiances of rituals and the brief flares of magic. Dear reader, Lolth speaks to those who are ready to do whatever it takes to fulfill her ambitions, and those select few who can uphold their nerve are rewarded in kind. The antechambers and war councils shine with fairsress with the constant fluorescent light illuminating upon stone. Priests receive males of their houses, and such outcasts usually are seen to require a dressing down, a dealing with, or a disappearance. It is the spider's shoulder before the fangs. Guardians are found throughout many temples, and most keep them, most hide them. Some craft them. Spiders of every size haunt pillar and altar, from silk curtain weavers to great patient brutes with a skull's intelligence behind their eyes. Be not lulled by the smaller skittering kind. Under Lolth's auspice, even harmless spiders can be fitted with tiny armor sheaths etched with house defense runes and sent to swarm a corridor as a living ward. The cunning priestesses sometimes charm or breed clever spiders capable of bearing active insignia, house badges wrought as talismans, their magic flickering at a bite's command. Elminster's note: he did not observe this. He hid behind a brazier and trembled, or so the records state. In every chamber, public, private, and unpleasant, stand statuettes of the Spider Queen, most hewn from black stone. Marble and obsidian are much favoured for altars, thrones, and those startling seats shaped so you never quite relax upon them. Great braziers, carved all about with spider shapes, spill a low, oily glow that makes everything seem nearer than it is. At least one altar of black stone presides, a table, a threshold, and, on unfriendly nights, a stage. One learns a sort of etiquette among these appointments. Do not fumble for a torch in the inner dark. The dark belongs to her. Do not stumble over the decorative spider idol near the antechamber. It is likely not decorative, nor entirely idle. Above all, do not admire the braziers aloud. They answer compliments by devouring your offerings. It is customary among houses to maintain private rites wherein rival kin are measured and, when necessary, trimmed. The public ceremonies, oh, those are for spectacle and signal, for declaring a city's mood, a house's ascendancy, or an enemy's approaching doom. If, by misadventure or ambition, you must enter such a temple, carry a courteous stillness. Count doors. Note the altars. Watch the walls. When a priestess smiles, remember that surrender and a frontal strategy can look identical at first glance. And should a very small spider pause upon the back of your glove, as if awaiting a signal, do not swat it, for that is sacred in her halls. Dear reader, I have lowered a lantern into the web. If your courage yet hangs by a thread, do take heart. A thread properly held can become a lifeline. Just mind which end is tied to you, and which to the Spider Queen. Chapter 2 of Silk Titles. Dear reader, if titles are the threads of a society, then among Lolth's faithful they are spun taut enough to cut you where you stand. The ranks decide who speaks, who listens, and who becomes a decorative stain on an altar step. They vary from city to city. Caprice is a civic virtue underground, yet, within each city, they're enforced with the precision of a spider devouring within its web. In the temple city of Lolth, beneath Kalimshan, Gwalidirth, to those who like coughing up gravel, the clergy are collectively called Yornathrins. Within that sacred snarl, one ascends through a ladder of silk that is anything but soft. These titles include Noamutha to Kalessa, the Tukyala, further still to Allura, then on to Quarthra, and onward to Talintha, then Elamshina, and lastly, Sun Dusa. Commit that to memory, dear reader. At the summit prowl the high-ranking priesthood known collectively as the Yathralars. Should one of these rule a noble house, she wears the title Ilhares. What surface tongues render matron mother. Rarer still is the venom-tinctured honorific Stria Valshares, Black Widow, bestowed upon those whose webs are wide and whose patience is short-lived. Specialty priests, those who bind doctrine to task with extra legs, are called araks. And yes, the pun is intentional. Drow humour has edges. The clergy draws chiefly from dark elves and their skittering allies, the Kyteens. Among the Drow faithful, some 96 in 100 are female. The few males admitted to Lolth's priesthood walk as if the floor might vanish, because it often does, as well as their throats if they step out of line. Lolth's doctrine. Here follow the pillars as I have collected and sprinted away from them. Fear is as strong as steel. Love and respect are derided as soft alloys unfit for bearing a future. All drow beyond Lolth's web must be converted or culled. The weak and rebellious are to be weeded, a verb that in practice involves pruning with swords or daggers in the back. Blasphemers perish. Those who impugn the faith are offerings waiting for a brazier. Males and slaves who act outside priestly dictate are sacrifices in waiting. Children are to be raised as loyal worshippers. Each family is expected to produce at least one priest to outdo the parents' devotion. All arachnids are sacred. Spiders mistreated, offenders die. I have seen trials with 8 witnesses and 1 verdict. Now, a crucial wrinkle. No rule is so firm that Lolth cannot twist it into a snare. The Spider Queen's will is famously, professionally, and capricious. The priest who follows the letter and not the tremor in the web finds the floor opening beneath her. Success belongs to those who are exquisitely attentive to the ever-shifting, often contradictory pulse of their goddess. Elminster's note. Translation. Have obedience, plus a tiny bit of paranoia. Questioning Lolth's motives is itself a sin. Aiding non-drow against drow is a greater sin. Setting love above her command is the sort of sin that gets named in chronicles and then taught to forget. The Queen delights in examinations with sharp edges, ordering the sacrifice of a favoured consort, for instance, to prove that devotion outranks affection in any form. Those who lose her favour are sometimes offered one chance at redemption, typically a task whose map is drawn on a cliff face. Survive, and you are restored, warily. Fail, and you, and the spectators who wagered poorly, will be killed, then reawakened in the 66th layer. Not all failures die outright. Some are made examples in a more durable fashion, driders, twisted half-elves, half-spider, wholly tragic. The lesson is carved in chitin. Fall, and fall usefully. Lolth also plays favourites. One season, you are the house's rising blade. The next, the webmother shows her dark face, and you learn you were only ever bait. Among the faithful, yesterday's triumph is today's pretext. Elminster's note.
He's right, he has been bait, and it was humorous.
Courtesies for the living, Volo's practical advice. Address a matron as Ilharis, unless corrected. Do not volunteer the phrase Black Widow. They will introduce it if they wish. When uncertain of a priestess's rank, remark upon the beauty of her station. This flatters without guessing wrong. Never speak for a spider. If one scuttles between you and a priestess, yield. You just walked into a sacred creature within her domain. If given a test, assume the instructions are incomplete by design. Ask a clarifying question framed as zeal. How might I best demonstrate her will? If you live, you would have asked well. Dear reader, titles are the web. Dogma is the tension upon it. If you must tread there, place each step as if it were being weighed, because it is. I have kept my footing, mostly by bowing to rank, heeding the tremors, and remembering that in Lolth's house, even mercy has her fangs throughout. Chapter 3. 8 Ways to Survive the Day. Dear reader, I once had a run-in with a mind flayer and attempted, mind you correctly, to extract an eye. Lolth, on the other hand, is not at the same echelon of complexity as of Ceramorphosis. Most of her following inhale with the cruel, capricious rhythm set by the Spider Queen herself. A priest of Lolth awakes to one task that devours all others: keep her favor. Before you fear a lack of information gathered here within this chapter for a perfectible breakdown of daily practices and her creed. The creed beneath the bustle is simple: manipulate all as Lolth would. Brutal force is a favored instrument, yet subtlety, silk over raw steel, is prized when it yields cleaner trophies. Treachery and cruelty may be rewarded, yes, but mark this well. Personal vendettas that bring defeat or shame to one's house, clan, city, or warband are remembered as sins of incompetence. Lolth delights in knives, she despises dull ones, or untargeted vengeance. Drow theology is a shifting fog, and each city swears it sees the shape true. Still, these beliefs recur. Die in Lolth's favour, and your spirit is said to be drawn into the abyss to serve as Yochlol or other intimate horrors of her court, handmaidens, who are devotion distilled into terror. Die in her disfavour, and torment awaits elsewhere. Some say a plane of gnawing exile, until perhaps one returns to the realms as snake or spider to crawl back up the web of fate. Elminster's note: certainty is in short supply underground. Fear is not. Thus, the daily duty of a good priest is whatever must be done to gain and keep the Spider Queen's smile, and avoid the long drop into her frown. Lolth demands regular homage, submission in prayer and tangible offerings. Her rites are listed below. Moonspite rites. On every full moon, sacrifices of surface elves are performed, an open insult flung at Sayanine Moonbow, whom Lolth hates with professional vigour. Women's webs. Most rites are conducted by women only in sanctified chambers. Low ceilings, 8 shadows, and a silence that listens back. Public displays. When a ritual requires uncommon puissance or a message writ in flame, ceremonies are conducted in the open and the company may be mixed. Males, allies, terrified foreigners, you. Sacrifices take several sanctioned forms. Blood tithe, the spilling of blood of captured foes or even drow faithful by a spider-shaped knife whose 8 descending legs are blades. Yes, 8. Yes, they all cut. Burnt treasures. In other observances, gems and precious objects are consigned to the braziers, prayers borne aloft in smoke that smells faintly of coins and regret. Eightfold flame. For great rites, 8 braziers are kindled, one for each of her legs, both as homage and as fuel for workings that drink flame like wine. The highest ceremonies are legends even among drow. They spurn precise description, and non-drow rarely witness them except once. Rumour insists these rites leave marks upon stone that no chisel can erase and upon souls that no absolution can lift. Chapter 4. Doors of Fire, Voices of Silk, on Summonings and Handmaidens, by Volothamp Gedarm, your singed but still charming correspondent, annotated, inevitably, by a meddlesome sage. Dear reader, mortals have forever tried to get the gods on the line. Most pray, some plead, a few light the right fire in the right bowl and discover that the line calls back. To court Lolth's notice, or to reach her when she is inclined to be reached. The brazier must burn oils or incense chosen for potency. The vessel must be of valuable black substance, onyx, obsidian, or a golden bowl whose interior is studded with black gems. Yes, inside the bowl. No, paint does not count. When kindled correctly, the fire is woven into a temporary interplanar gate, linking our humble prime to the 66th layer of the abyss. Through such a door, Lolth may appear, or send what she wills. shaping the very flame material into semblances of those she wishes to be seen. If it does not please Lolth to answer personally, the flame will fetch her servants, the Yochlol, handmaidens whose devotion has curdled into dreadful utility of her betrayals. Call with sufficient force, and a Yochlol may fully emerge. How does one measure sufficient? By the value of what you burn, and the certainty that you will later wish you had not. Lolth commonly keeps half a dozen such handmaidens ready at any time. When dispatched, they are typically bound to the duration of the flames that birthed them. As the fire gutters, so do they withdraw, snuffed back to the abyss when the last ember dies. Note, however, that they can also be recalled in an instant, mid-sentence, mid-threat, mid-smile. The Queen often assigns these handmaidens to high-ranking priests who have pleased her. It is a nasty grace. The Yochlol frequently go masked as female drow, moving through halls as confidants, guards, or cousins who appeared this season from a distant branch of the family web. Treat every unfamiliar smile as a test you did not study for. Yochlol left to linger in the prime material labor, quietly, busily, to bring other demons across for purposes known only to themselves and their lady. Such correspondences are made by prayers in abyssal, which sounds like a quarrel between knives, or by the opening of further gate spells. You may not see the letter pass, but you will notice the reply. Dear reader, if this chapter has kept your fingers away from black bowls and bright oils, then my singed eyebrows have served a purpose. If not, well, at least bring a second brazier. You will want a spare door, should the first decide to close on you. Chapter 5. The city that prays in knives, Gwalidirth and her orders. Dear reader, some cities are built of stone, some of stories ready for the annals of history. Deep beneath the deserts of Kalimshan, where the southern tunnels nibble at old deep Shanatar, sprawls the temple city of Lolth, a metropolis whose avenues and corridor are filled with countless altars, and whose politics are performed with the punctuality, often of a noose. Rule within this city rests with a council of 21 matron mothers, each the voice and fangs of one or more sect, cult, or faction in the Spider Queen's ever-bickering choir. Influence is measured not in votes, perish the surface-born thought, but in magnificence. The grander the house of worship a sect can erect, the louder it speaks, and the more power from Lolth it receives. Thus, Gwalidirth is cluttered with sanctities of every scale, from simple shrines tucked into stalagmite crooks, to modest chapels hung like cocoons along cavern walls, to grand cathedrals that encompass whole plazas in their shadow. There are hundreds, dear reader, thousands, if you count the ruins, and the drow do love to count their ruins. Many of these sanctuaries gape abandoned, their congregations having prospered into more ostentatious and more defensible quarters, or stand ruined outright, their flocks ceremonially murdered in the sort of religious strife that never quite ends, only pauses to sharpen a different knife. The only blasphemy that truly unites Gwalidirth's clergies is the unforgivable heresy of dark elves worshipping other gods. Why, whole quarters will rally to crush a nest of Vaeron sworn in Serenastar, the forest of Myr. Even then, unity is a costume. The seams split quickly under the strain of victory's spoils. Elminster's note: he understates the blood and overstates the architecture. Reverse these for accuracy. A traveller may spend 3 days here and see 30 different true faces of Lolth, each sect proclaiming itself the spider and the others merely legs. If you must enter, carry respect, coin, and be ready to complement an altar's defensive features. In Gwalidirth, beauty is judged by how well it survives a siege. Surprisingly, an elite order of male crusaders is found in the city. Yes, male. Found only in those drow cities where Lolth is revered and males are permitted within her priesthood's shadow. Styled the Order of Soul Spiders, they serve directly beneath the ruling matron mothers as agents of uncontrolled retribution. Give them a quarry, and they will hunt tirelessly, unthreading streets, markets, and memories, and laying havoc as spore. Interfere, and you become a stain on the polished floors. Food for the spiderkin. They continue until recalled, a rarity spoken of like good weather, or destroyed. Now, dear reader, if Lolth teaches the traveller anything, it is that desire is the road, and betrayal is the toll. The Underdark takes coin in both. A road paved with bones comes a dry whisper at my shoulder, and the toll-taker never gives change. Once, in Gwaladurth, I heard a matron croon to her pupils as 8 braziers breathed like patient beasts. Children. Pawns, more likely. Dancing dolls for the Spider Queen. Puppets on the imperceptible but impervious strands of her web. All climb the Spider Queen's ladders, all hunt for her pleasure, and all fall to the hunters of her pleasure. A lullaby, yes, but also a map, and every path on it loops back to her smile. Or her teeth, the old mage remarks, which is fairness disguised as pessimism. There, love is her leverage with a vile perfume. Tenderness is a trap with silk springs. Vows are cords waiting to be pulled. A kiss can be an invoice, a caress, a contract, and bed curtains, a killing field. I have stood in a sanctum where a prayer swelled to fill the stone, honest as a blade. Great goddess, mother of the dark, grant me the blood of my enemies, for drink, and their living hearts for meat. Grant me the screams of their young for song. Grant me the helplessness of their males for my satisfaction. Grant me the wealth of their houses for my bed. By this unworthy sacrifice, I honor you, Queen of Spiders, and beseech of you the strength to destroy my foes. After such an anthem, what treaty can live? What tryst can last the hour? None worth staking a life on, he says, and the echo agrees. So how does a traveller pass through the Underdark where lust writes the laws and betrayal stamps the seal? By refusing to be a step for someone else's ascent. Speak little and mean less. Admire altars for their masonry, not their miracles. Accept gifts that can be carried at a sprint. If you must trust, test it twice. Once in silence, once in smoke. And wear the result like a borrowed cloak you can shrug off when the wind turns. And plan your leaving at the same moment you arrive, he adds, sensible as a locked door. You will be tempted by smiles that fit your name, by promises shaped to your emptiest places. But remember the lullaby's truth. You are invited to dance on strands you cannot see and cannot break. And if the web trembles, he warns, it is not only because you move upon it, it is because something larger is already closing. In the end, dear reader, Lolth's lesson to the wanderer is a caution. Desire, in her realm, is a corridor whose doors open inward and lock from the outside. Betrayal is the key everyone carries, and no one admits to owning. Survive by stepping lightly, by stepping early, or, best of all, by stepping elsewhere. I spin thy web of chaos, mother. I spin it in your name. Let not the threads unravel.